thought about it. Everybody has. A little place of your own. Your name over the door. Your food, your music, a room full of people who came because of you. Wonderful. Congratulations. You just did the thing millions of people only daydream about. You opened a restaurant. Here's the deal. It's going to be exactly 1 year, 12 months. And by the time we get to the far end of it, a quarter of the people who open today will have shut their doors for good. Give it 3 years. Over half are gone. So the only question that matters tonight is the one you're going to be asking yourself at every single step. Could you survive running a restaurant? Let's find out which one of these little guys is you. Now, before we start, let's kill a lie, because it's the first thing everyone throws at you. You've heard it. 90% of restaurants fail in the first year. It's on every blog, in every warning your uncle gave you. And it's nonsense. Nobody can find where that number came from. The trail runs back to a reality TV show from 2003 and an old credit card advert. It was never a study. It was a vibe. Which would be great news, except the real number is somehow worse, because the real number is true. The actual research, a proper study of thousands of restaurants, found that about 1 in 4 don't make it through year 1. Not 90%, 26. But keep watching that clock because by the 3-year mark, roughly 60% are gone. The restaurant doesn't kill you on opening night. It kills you slowly on a timer. So the myth had it backwards. Surviving year 1 isn't the hard part. Surviving is the whole part. And there's one number, one silent killer that decides it. Most owners never even look at it until it's already eaten them. Hold on to that. We'll name it when you're ready to hear it. So here's how we play. 100 of you open today. I'm going to walk you through your first year. Every disaster in order, each one with a real number behind it. And at every gate, we count how many of you are left. 100 dreamers, 1 year. Nobody's died yet. Let's open the doors. Before you sell a single plate of food, the restaurant has already taken its first bite. Out of you. You need a kitchen, ovens, walk-in fridges, extraction, a grease trap. You need tables, chairs, a bar, a till system, a sign, plates, 1,000 forks. You need to turn a bare room into a place. And that build-out is where the dream meets its first real number. A survey of hundreds of real owners put the median cost to open at around $375,000. And that was back in 2018, so today it's more. That's about $113 for every single square foot, and roughly $3,500 per seat before anyone sits in it. Every chair in your dining room cost more than the meal that chair will ever serve. And that's just the build. On top of it sits the stuff nobody photographs for the launch. The landlord who wants several months' rent as a deposit before you get the keys, the licenses, the permits, the insurance, the first big food order that has to be paid for before a single customer pays you. The money goes out in a flood. It comes back in a trickle. And here's the trap most of you just walked into. You spent everything getting the doors open. Therefore, you opened with no cushion. No cash for the lean months, and there are always lean months. Because that same survey found the median restaurant takes about 5 months just to turn its first monthly profit, and 18 to 24 months to earn back what you spent building it. That's your runway. That's the clock now ticking under everything else we do tonight. Every gate from here drains it a little more. And now the number that should scare you more than the build-out. Let's say a table pays you $100 for their night out. Guess how much of that 100 you actually keep once the food, the staff, the rent, the power, the insurance, and the tax have taken their slice. About $3 to $5. On a full-service restaurant, that's a normal, healthy year. $95 out of every 100 is already spoken for before the customer even sits down. You are running the whole circus, to keep the loose change. Still 100 of you. You've only spent money so far. That part's easy. Now you have to make some. Opening night. The room is full. Friends, family, the curious, the local food blogger lurking in the corner. This is the night you dreamed about. It is also the night the restaurant finds out everything you got wrong. The tickets come in a wave. Table 4 wants their mains, Table 9 hasn't got their starters, someone sent the fish back, the card machine's frozen. Somewhere in that chaos, you discover the quiet catastrophe. You priced the menu wrong. That burger you charged $14 for. By the time you count the beef, the bun, the cheese, the fries, the little pot of slaw, the oil, the gas, the hands that cooked it, you're barely making a cent on it. Maybe you're losing on it. You didn't find that out in a spreadsheet. You found it out at 8:15 on a Friday with 40 people watching. That's how restaurants learn. And a few of you won't recover from that first month. Not because you're bad cooks, because you ran out of road before you found your feet. The pace is merciless, and it starts on day 1. 3 of you are already gone, 97 left. We haven't even hit the real killers yet. Here's the thing nobody warns you about. In most businesses, you buy a thing, you sell a thing, you know your margin. In a restaurant, your product rots. It gets overportioned. It gets dropped, burnt, sent back, comped, nibbled by staff, thrown out at close. And every one of those is money you already paid for, walking straight out the bin. The rule the survivors live by. Your food cost, what the ingredients cost versus what you sell them for, has to sit somewhere around 28 to 35% of your sales. Let it drift to 40, 45, and the math simply stops closing. There's no volume that saves you. You're just losing money faster. And it leaks in ways you'd never guess. Industry estimates put restaurant food waste at anywhere from 4 to 10% of everything you buy, thrown away before it ever earns a cent. A slightly too heavy hand on the steaks, a fridge left open, a delivery that spoils over a slow weekend. Pennies. But a restaurant is built out of pennies, and it dies from them too. This is the first silent one. Your dining room can be full, your reviews can be glowing, and this little leak in the back can still be quietly bleeding you white. Therefore, the busy restaurant and the dying restaurant can look absolutely identical from the street. 5 more of you didn't watch the number in the back. 92. And I did promise you a silent killer. You've only met half of it. If food is one half of the killer, this is the other. People. You cannot run a restaurant alone, and staff is the single biggest check you write. For a full-service place, the research pegs labor at a median of around 36.5% of sales. More than a third of everything gone on wages, before you've paid for a grain of rice. And it never holds still. The restaurant industry runs staff turnover of roughly 75% a year, meaning that in 12 months you'll replace most of the team you started with. Everyone you lose, you rehire and retrain, and a green kitchen makes more mistakes, wastes more food, moves slower. The two killers feed each other. And the wage bill only points one direction, up. Minimum wages have been climbing across much of the country, and in a business where a third of every dollar already goes to labor, each rise lands directly on the one number you can least afford to move. You can't automate a waiter. You can't outsource a chef. When the cost of people goes up, in a restaurant, it goes straight through you. And here it is. The number I told you to hold on to. Put your food cost and your labor cost together, and you get the one figure that actually decides whether you live, prime cost. The survivors keep prime cost at or below about 60% of sales. Cross 65 and you've entered the red zone. There is almost no way to be profitable up there. And this isn't a hunch. When they compared the restaurants that made money to the ones that lost it, the profitable ones ran labor around 34%, the losers nearly 43%. That gap, 8 or 9 cents on the dollar, is the whole difference between the lights on and the lights off. 7 of you just crossed the line and didn't come back. 85 left standing. That was the silent killer. Everything from here just speeds it up. You've priced the menu. You've tamed prime cost. You're actually starting to breathe. And then the door opens, and it's the one visitor no restaurant wants unannounced. The health inspector. In a lot of cities, your hygiene score goes straight in the window for every customer to read. And that little letter is worth real money. A landmark study in Los Angeles, back when they brought in mandatory grade cards, found something remarkable. Restaurants that earned an A saw revenue rise about 5.5%, while a middling C actually lost sales. A single letter painted on the glass moved the whole business. But it isn't just money on the line here, and this is the part that should sober you up. That same grading system was followed by roughly a 20% drop in people being hospitalized for foodborne illness across the city. That's what the inspector is actually there for. Get it wrong, a fridge running warm, a cross-contaminated board. And you're not just risking a bad grade. You can be shut on the spot that day, no appeal. Every empty table while you're closed still owes rent. 3 more shuttered over a failed inspection. 82. Clean kitchens, everyone. Now, let's talk about the thing you can't control at all. Here's the cruelest twist in the whole year, and it's the one that breaks the "if the food's good, you'll be fine" fantasy for good. Your survival is partly decided by strangers on their phones, and the maths of it is brutal. A Harvard study of online reviews found that for an independent restaurant, a single extra star was worth something like a 5 to 9% jump in revenue. 1 star, 5 to 9%, and it cuts the other way just as hard. And notice, that was independence. The chains barely moved. So the little dream restaurant, your restaurant, is exactly the one most exposed to one angry customer with a grudge and a keyboard. Good food doesn't shield you. Sometimes the food was perfect, and the guy was just having a bad day. And then there's the empty chair. You take a booking for 8 at 7 o'clock. You turn away walk-ins. You prep the food. You staff the floor. And they simply don't come. No call. Restaurants report no-shows running anywhere from 10 to 20% of covers on a bad night. Picture a small 40-seat place. It can take as few as 6 no-show tables to wipe out the entire night's profit. You didn't do anything wrong. 6 people just didn't turn up. And it's worse than an empty table because that table wasn't free to hold. You bought the ingredients for it. You rostered a server for it. You told the walk-in couple at the door, "Sorry, we're fully booked," and sent your actual paying customers down the street to a competitor. A no-show doesn't just cost you the meal they didn't eat, it costs you the meal you turned away to save their seat. Therefore, and this is the whole cruelty of it, on a 3 to 5% margin, you don't need a disaster to sink. You just need a run of ordinary bad luck, a cold snap, a 1-star week, a few no-shows. The restaurant has almost no shock absorbers. 4 more, gone on a bad month that wasn't even their fault. 78. And now the season turns. Every restaurant has them. January after the Christmas rush, the dead middle of a heat wave, the weeks the room just doesn't fill. Your sales fall off a cliff. And here is the sentence that ends more restaurants than any bad review ever will. The rent doesn't care. Occupancy costs, rent, rates, the lot, are supposed to sit under about 6 to 10% of your sales. But that percentage is calculated on a good month. When sales have, in the slow season, the rent stays exactly the same. So overnight, it's eating 15–20% of a much smaller pie. This is where that runway we talked about at the start finally runs out. Remember, you opened with no cushion because the build-out took everything. Therefore, the slow season isn't an inconvenience for you. It's the test you've been walking toward all year. The ones with a little cash buried away limp through to spring. The ones without don't. Same food, same street, same slow season. One had reserves and one didn't. That, not talent, is who makes it to month 12. And that's the year. Let's count the room. 100 of you opened this restaurant 1 year ago tonight. 74 of you are still standing. Not 90% dead. Not the horror story your uncle promised. About 1 in 4 gone. Exactly what the real data says. If you made it here, genuinely, well done. Most of the world never even opens the door. But before you celebrate, remember what I told you at the very start. Watch the clock keep moving. Because year 1 was the tutorial. By year 3, that 74 falls to roughly 40. Over half of everyone who opened with you, gone. The restaurant never stops counting. It just gets patient. And here's the last thing the numbers told us, the part almost nobody expects. When researchers actually asked why those restaurants closed, a huge share of them didn't go bust at all. The owners quit. Divorce, exhaustion, health gone, a marriage that couldn't survive 80-hour weeks. The restaurant didn't just come for their money, it came for their life, and plenty of people who could have kept the lights on simply couldn't keep going. So, could you survive running a restaurant? On the money, maybe. 3 in 4 make the year. But the restaurant was never really testing your cooking. It was testing whether you could watch one silent number. Prime cost, every single day for years, while the rent laughed and the strangers left 1 star and the chairs sat empty, and still get up and unlock the door. Because a restaurant doesn't die when the food goes bad. It dies when the maths was never on the menu. And by the time you finally read it, the kitchen's already gone cold. If you're new here, welcome to the arena. This whole channel takes one business the world romanticizes and runs it through the meat grinder of what the numbers actually say. No fairy tales, no nonsense, just the real math, drawn as a blood sport. If that's your kind of thing, subscribe. It genuinely helps a small channel take on the big fake ones. Next time, we put 2 giants of an industry in the arena and ask who'd actually win a war to the death. And it's not who you'd bet on. And tell me in the comments, knowing everything you now know, would you still open that little place? Comment Survivor if you'd have made it today 365. I'm reading them. Every empire booms, most go bust. Try not to be one of them.